Let's go ahead and get started because considering this is a priority management in hectic times, no time like the present to dive right in. So again, good morning, everyone. Just delighted to see you all or have you all join this morning for our nonprofit training session. Again, the title Priority Management in Hectic Times. I'm Angie Detlefs-Tretton. I'm the Chief Community Impact Officer for the Community Foundation of Greater Des Moines. And I'm guessing, like many of you, I too am always looking for some strategies, tips, tricks to manage all these competing demands that we have, not even just professionally, but also personally. And then you throw in things like the pandemic and the derecho and just how we all emerge from this time. Hectic is a good way to describe it. So I'm glad to have some colleagues here with me learning this morning. So I know many of you on the call, and certainly can only anticipate the amount of juggling and plate spinning and calendaring and to-do lists that are happening all the time with many of you. So our goal this morning is for you to really walk away with some approaches that can support you while you support your organizations, and hopefully some of those things that you can share with your colleagues and others within your nonprofit or even just in your personal lives as well. So I'm going to ask Bridget to click to the next slide here for us. And just before we dive into content, just want to remind everyone, as you look for ways to really support your mission within your organizations, just want to remind you about the Give DSM platform that we have through the Community Foundation. So nonprofit organizations can post general funding needs. So all of those operational expenses that we know are a reality for you to do your work, you can post that on the Give DSM platform, as well as timely needs that you may have, and then also capital campaign or capital infrastructure type costs that you have. So thinking about the summer months ahead, you know, those air conditioning units that you need to have replaced, or the building expansions that you're doing. So please take a moment and post on the Give DSM platform. It really has been used both by donors through the Community Foundation, but also the community at large. I mentioned had a family conversation, a family philanthropy meeting last night, and the family had gone through Give DSM before we met. So please know that people are using this as a resource, and we'd love to be able to share funding needs with your organizations there. So Bridget on our team is the person to connect with if you need any help getting things posted to Give DSM. So with that, on the next slide, I'm going to ask Bridget to move us along, and I'm going to introduce you to our guest this morning, Meredith Jinks, who is with 6585 Consulting, and we're so excited to have her here. I think when I think of Meredith, I think of a relationship builder, and so I love having her join this morning to really talk through some strategies and solutions on how you manage priorities during times of disruption and in those hectic spaces. So Meredith is really engaged in consulting along with her colleague, Melinda DiCarlo, and has done a lot of work both in the corporate space, but also in the nonprofit space as well throughout Greater Des Moines. So with that, I'm going to hand it right over to Meredith and ask her to help dive in on this content. And again, appreciate having you all here this morning. So Meredith, welcome. And what can you do to help us manage right now all these priorities? Thanks again for joining us today. You're on mute. It's the very common 2021, 2020, you know, if we had a meeting without saying you're on mute, it wouldn't be a meeting at all. So we got that out of the way.
Do I have it now? Can you hear me
You're
now? We're like throwback, right? The Verizon commercial was just ahead of its time. Like, can you hear me now? Because I feel like that is what we are all saying all the time now. So thank you guys so much for having me today. I'm so excited to work with you all. So I don't know about you guys, but I always feel like I need more time in my day. I don't know anyone who goes, you know what? I totally have enough time. In fact, you know, I was kind of bored. That's like a 4-letter word. I just don't even know that word anymore. So I'm sure that's very similar to a lot of you guys as well. So let me back up a little bit. as Angie said, I am Meredith Dings, and I'm with 6585 Consulting. We are best known probably for leadership development, but we spend a lot of time in organizations of all different sizes, profit, nonprofit, big, little. And really what we do is we help people try to figure out how to solve problems through people, right? So people are our best gift and sometimes our biggest place and space we spend our time, right? So we help with policies, procedures, alignment, things like HR consulting. We do a lot with, right now, what does organizational wellness look like? We're spending a lot of time working with that, and of course in the DEI space. So never a dull day, let's face it. But for this session, let's jump into time management. And that's really what it's all about. So I feel like there are some people who have 48 hours in one day, and I feel like I have sometimes 12 hours in one day. Can anybody else relate to that? Or is that just me? Yes. And please feel free during all of this session. I want it to be super engaging. I want it to be dynamic. So by all means, talk in the chat, unmute yourself, do better than I did, and take yourself off mute. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk. The first question that I have for you is who and or what waste your time? Okay, so feel free if you want to raise your hand in the chat and you want to talk that way. If you want to blurt, that's okay too, if you want to talk in the chat. But let's have some discussion around this. Who and or what waste your time? And I know that sounds bad, right, to say waste, but sometimes it certainly feels that way, that things are like time sucks. So let's see. Hannah says phone. Jennifer says standing meetings and still meetings without real action items needed. Email, answering it timely. Yes. So meetings, I don't really know anybody again who says, oh, please sign me up for more meetings. I really want at least 5 more meetings in my day. Absolutely. Meetings can be where time goes to die. It feels like, you know, you feel every darn second on that clock moving around and it's painful. And it's because meetings are not often run effectively, right? So what we want to do is be able to come up with a bunch of different tips, tools, and techniques from today's session that you can go away and go, oh, you know what? I can more efficiently spend my time and allocate my time. And I can be really cognizant of what I'm saying yes to and what I'm saying no to. Let's see, email, answering it timely. And then, oh, we have a joke, right? Timeliness, is that really something that we do? Absolutely. So email is serious time waster. We oftentimes, I know on my computer, I have notifications often set up where, you know, I'm working on something and all of a sudden an email pops up and I think, squirrel, I got to go answer that email. And then I switch gears. Let me tell you, when you are in the middle of working on something, the best gift you can ever give yourself is to turn notifications off. Turn them off because it is inevitable. You think, wow, what am I missing? What should I be doing? And when we have that notification constantly on, it is totally making us deviate and switch our attention to something else. And that ends up sometimes making us go down a rabbit hole. So turn the notifications off, especially when we have something important that we're working on in front of us. Oh gosh, okay, all the platforms, right? So this also happens with notifications that we have with Facebook or Instagram. I think, well, Angie posted something cool. In fact, you know what? I'm a conscious and confident. I just fell into this trap last week. I had my notifications on. I didn't listen to my own advice and I didn't turn the notifications on. And all of a sudden I heard that there is going to be a new skating event at the Lordson Skate Park with Dew. The Dew is hosting this. And I had to go on that site. I checked out Dew's Facebook page. I went to go see when tickets were available for the skateboarding thing because I thought, oh my gosh, my daughter's going to want this. And then I couldn't find when the tickets were going on sale. So then I went to the Community Foundation's website. I went to Catch Des Moines. Guys, this happens, right? This is a real life scenario of something that seems like, oh, I'll just check this out for 2 seconds. And then we get obsessed and fixated maybe on this. And then I think, what the heck was I even working on? So absolutely, all the platforms can be so distracting. Sarah says feeling glued to her desk. Yeah, sometimes we think, oh my gosh, I can't leave my desk. I need to focus. But you know what? I'm going to tell you, and this is maybe not something that your bosses are big like proponents of, taking breaks is actually a really good thing. It's really good for mental health. When you feel like you are stuck, switch it up, change the environment, change something up. This actually utilizes and makes the best of your time so that you can switch gears and be able to come back to it in a better, more constructive way. So procrastination, David says, to avoid projects you don't want to do. Yes, procrastination is for sure something that some of us are guilty of, right? Procrastination is hard. It's an easy trap to fall into, but it's hard once we get into that rut of procrastinating. Then that can be a real challenge. But guys, let's talk about the reality of working from home. Laundry. Anybody else find that they're doing more laundry in the middle of the day, maybe when they wouldn't do that before? Or taking the dogs for a walk, which then turns into maybe my neighbors are out and I can't be rude. I need to say hello. Right? Working from home has some other time wasters that we need to figure out what those are and how then to manage those. Then when we're back in the office, absolutely, when we're back in the office, then we have friends and we're excited to see our coworkers. And then we start maybe talking about The Bachelor, or we start talking about something that was on the news, even much more constructive than The Bachelor. And then time gets away from us. And so what starts as kind of a, hey, how are you, relationship and rapport building, which is important, sometimes then turns into, oh my goodness, that took a half an hour. Community Foundation says, I think about falling into the desire to handle the small things first, to check them off the list, maybe another strategy to avoid some of the big things. Absolutely. So I love the art of being done. Does anyone else, when you can just do that easy check off the list? But one of the things I want to talk to you a little bit about is the idea of day parting your day, okay? So I started my career at Laser 103.3, okay? I started out in sales. And one of the things that they teach you in radio sales that you learn first and foremost is that there are prime times of the day, right? So this is when ads are the most expensive for those of you who've bought advertising. This is your drive time. This is your time in the morning, 6 to 8 a.m., and this is your time in the afternoons, more like 4 to 6, where you have most amount of people that are in their cars and potentially listening to your ad. But what's interesting is if you think about the idea of day parting, it actually is super relevant to time and how we can be more effective and efficient with our time. So what I've found out about myself is that I'm a morning person. I love morning. I have lots of energy. I love being able to get up and knock some things out. Now, if y'all saw me more at 2 or 3 in the day, I might not be the best version of myself, or maybe not my most efficient version. So what I recommend is doing a little bit of day parting, if you will, finding your prime time, finding out what time you work best so that you can knock out those big projects. So now when I'm scheduling my day, oftentimes I schedule it with the idea of I'm best in the morning. I feel the quickest. I feel like I bring most of myself to my day, more of myself maybe than later when I get a little bit more tired, I need a little bit more caffeine. So what I do is I think, okay, what are my hardest tasks I need to do today? Or what's going to take the most mental energy? And then I actually put those during my day parts where I'm the best. So it doesn't matter to me if you guys are best in the afternoon, just think about, okay, those are the tasks that I really need to get done. Now, of course, y'all have to actually do it during that time. I can't procrastinate it if it is an afternoon. But if you think about your schedule in that sort of way and think about what are my hardest tasks and when can I get those done, that is super important. Okay, you'll find that actually you end up having more energy during the time that maybe isn't your prime time. because you have gotten those harder tasks out of the way. And then you can do things like maybe answer emails during that other time. Okay. So just a little idea on starting our day. All right. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments at any time, please feel free to comment and or ask questions. I cannot, for some reason, see you all. So I feel like I'm talking to a void. So please know if you are raising hands, I'm not trying to be disrespectful and not get you. We'll figure out if there's a different way I can see. Okay.
Hey, Meredith, quick question.
Yes.
The concept of day parting,
Yeah.
somebody was asking, is there, how do you really identify those times of day when you've got the energy? Is it something where you like monitor for a week and like jot things down, or what would be a good strategy other than kind of saying, yeah, I feel like I'm good in the morning with my coffee? Is there some more specific way to identify your high productivity times that way?
Yeah, so I think part of it is a little bit of the self-management and being aware of when do you feel like you do have the burst of energy. Okay, so do you feel like even on your weekends, I love to go for walks, let's say in the afternoon. Maybe that's a trend or a pattern or a theme of how you spend your time. Again, if you think on the weekends, it actually ends up giving you a better reflection than on the workday. So if you think on your weekends, first thing in the morning, I'm geared up and I'm ready to go. Or if you think, I like to sleep in, and then, maybe around 10 or so, I'm really raring to go. And I feel like I have lots of energy at that time. Or maybe you're kind of a later bloomer, right? Maybe it's late in the day that it's when you want to go run errands and you think, okay, I'm ready to head out to Jordan Creek and deal with the traffic now. So think about where and how you spend your weekends, because ultimately that tends to be when and where we are at our best energy wise, and where and how we like to allocate our time. Okay. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, the weekend reflection is good. It's a good reminder.
Take it out of the workplace for sure. In fact, I'm such a morning person. I get so annoyed that things open at 10 a.m. because of having kids. I think, why do they not like close during nap time instead and have us like have everything open at 8 a.m.? But again, that's just me and my schedule and what I prefer for my own time management. Not that everybody wants to be up bright and early in the morning. All right, Miss Bridget, can you switch it to our next slide? Thank you so much. All right, so let's talk about cost of time. Time is worth money, all right? So let's say potentially you are making $40,000 a year. That means each hour of your time is worth $20. So each minute is worth 34 cents. Okay. May not seem like a lot, but if you stop and have that conversation about, let's say, The Bachelor, or let's say the Super Bowl, or whatever that conversation is, wow, those cents start adding up into real money. Okay, so this is where we have to think. When I'm saying yes to something, okay, I'm giving away money, essentially, right? When you give up your time, you're giving up your money. And that's okay to say yes to these things sometimes, but we have to be aware of what our time is actually worth, because time is such an incredible, incredible commodity that we have. And there is a finite amount of it. It isn't an infinite, we can just grow more time. So it's important when we are saying yes to anything, whether that is saying yes to a project that maybe we really don't need to be involved in, or maybe that's saying yes to putting in a load of laundry and then maybe putting in some things in the dishwasher and then dusting for a little bit. All of this is worth our time, which is worth money. Okay, so these are some actual hard costs monetarily, the cost of time. but there are other costs of time. Okay, there are other costs to saying yes to things. There are other costs to saying no to things. So let's talk about some of those now. What are some costs as you see to time? And what I'd like us to do is I'd like us to actually go into breakout sessions and talk for a couple of minutes about other costs to our time, not monetary costs, but other costs that are associated with time. All right, so it is actually not, oh, there, look at this. Then I got breakout room sessions. I love it. The Community Foundation, look, they are so prepared. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and have you guys go out to breakout rooms here for a little bit. What are costs to our time and what is our time worth? All right, go ahead and have that conversation and we'll meet back here soon. All right, welcome back, everyone. Can you guys all hear me?
We gotcha.
All right, perfect. Okay, so when we talk about what other things do we need to consider other than monetarily, like the costs that are associated with it? Feel free to chat or feel free to talk out loud with me.
Our group decided that we have to consider what we won't be doing during that time if we offer to do something for some other project or person or whatever, what doesn't get done or who are we neglecting?
Absolutely, yeah. There's some hard costs in that, aren't there? Things to think about. Good, thanks, Carrie. Other thoughts?
We talked about the cost to relationships inside the office and outside the office, and then also the cost of not making self-care a priority, not taking a lunch break, not really being willing to put that many cents a minute on taking care of ourselves.
Okay, I'm loving this, right? So the idea that there's also costs associated to our relationships, both inside and outside of the workplace. So let's start there. So the idea that, let's say I say yes to you, right? Rachel, I'm going to do this project. I'm going to help. I'm going to be fully on board. But my plate is so full that I've said yes and I have every intention to do it. And then I don't deliver on that. Can that damage the relationship inside of the workplace? I mean, absolutely, right? When I say yes and I mean it, but I haven't really looked at everything that I have on my plate and I haven't really prioritized and said, oh gosh, you know what, this is a lower priority for me. That does create problems then. Good, absolutely. Then we also have then the external relationships. We have relationships that, let's say it means I can't go to my daughter's soccer practice, right? I've said yes to so much at work that then the byproduct is I'm missing out on time with my family. And those relationships are so important as well. And then, Rachel, I love what you said about the relationships we have with ourselves too, right? So I can be super mom and I can be super employee and I can do all these things and I can be depleted, right? And so the idea that saying yes and trying to give our time away to everyone actually can be super negative too, because it does impact us as people. So good, I love that. Great conversation. Other things you guys talked about for what kind of other costs are that are associated with time.
Meredith, I could add a little aside to that, and that is,
please.
Let's say you decide, okay, my family comes first at this particular time. I'm going to say no to this other thing I might have done. But if your brain is still on the other thing you might have done and you're not fully engaged and your family can see that you're not fully engaged with them, it doesn't feel good to them and it doesn't help you, and you have sacrificed something for the relationship, but it was not worth it. It didn't work.
Right.
There's a mental attendance and there's a physical attendance.
Oh, Carrie, I love that so much. And you're so right, because it's not just physically being there, right? It's being able to be present and really engaged in whatever it is, whether I'm at work being present or whether I'm at home being present, because otherwise it's just going through the motions. You know, they're calling right now the cell phone the adult pacifier. And they're saying that it is the worst thing that has happened to adults because we say, oh no, I'm just doing work. Oh no, I'm just doing blah, 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 fill in the gap. But really what it means is if I'm focused here on this that's in my hand, I'm not focused on what else is happening, right? And we all will give reasons why we have to have it. But I was just listening to the radio the other day, and there was an ad from a company who's doing some consumer research about, can you give up screens for a full day? And it's so funny, right? We laugh and we're like, well, how hard is it to give up screens for a full day? And yet screens is one of the biggest ways that we lose time every single day. So it's really fascinating. There's a lot of really great research to show lots of different things. And if you've watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix, you'll see, you know, really, gosh, by design, the algorithm is meant to draw us in for social media. And even the people who are designing it are finding it's working so effectively, they themselves can't say no to the product. So that's what it is. It is designed to take our time. Okay. So with that, then we have to be super cognizant that says, again, if I am spending time on this device, that means there are other things I am not spending time on. So yeah, lots of really interesting conversation about time, especially in regards to media. Other questions or thoughts or comments you guys have had about this?
I'll add kind of along the lines of what Carrie was saying about being distracted with family or with work. Talked about kind of the energetic cost of what you say yes to. So even if I'm committing to something that's an hour later in the week, I might like be stressing about it and stewing on it all week long. And so there's kind of that weight. And then another thing that was brought up in our group was high impact versus low impact work. So are you just taking things on to fill your time to feel productive, to check things off that are not as important, or are you taking on, you know, kind of a higher impact work, and is that a different weight on your time as well?
Yes, I love this so much, Beck. So if I ever look down, it's because I'm writing notes. I always have a notebook with me. So I love this so much. There's a lot to this. So the idea of the energy. So I am planning my 5-year-old having a birthday party on Saturday. Okay, it's a 5-year-old birthday party. This should not be that big of a deal, but it is my baby. I'm not having any more kids now. And so it's got to be like the best 5-year-old birthday party ever, right? So lame, but because we didn't have COVID and I have mom guilt and all of this stuff, she didn't really get a birthday party last year. The amount of mental energy I have put into this stupid but fantastic birthday party is unbelievable. But yes, absolutely, because that's even something I want to spend time on. But it still takes a lot of mental capacity and emotional capacity because I want to make it right. And I want to make it COVID friendly. And I want to make it blah, 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 fill in the gaps, right? But we all say yes to these things that are supposed to even give us joy and bring happiness. And yet it's hovering. It's hovering. And your example of it could even be 1 hour worth of time, but how many hours of time do we spend thinking about this and agonizing? Absolutely. And then I love the idea of these higher impact versus lower impact, right? So one of the things we want to do is we want to make sure that where we're spending our time today has the best, what we're going to call return on time invested, ROTI, return on time invested tomorrow. So if I am going to do something today, will it pay off tomorrow and in the future? Because if it's not, and it's kind of minutia or busy work, or I know that this never happens to anybody out here, but if it's something even that's, I'm going to call it ego work, right? So that I can say yes to something to make myself look really good to somebody else, does that really pay off tomorrow? Right? Is that really where I need to be investing my time today? And or are there other areas or things that I can be doing so that I can be actually more effective and more efficient with my time? Okay. Other things you guys talked about.
I just dropped in the chat, Meredith, a couple of things. So similar to the energy comment, we talked about kind of how you can have a loss of momentum. So if you're writing and then you get distracted or you get called into something else, you can really lose that flow that you're in. We talked about, all of the things that you're managing or trying to manage. A cost can really be, taking away some of the joy that you find in your roles. Volunteer professional roles. And then the other thing that I thought was really interesting, well, we talked about reputational impact, which we had discussed, but the piece that I thought was quite interesting is you can lose quality control. So the example was brought up, if you are managing all of these different elements, and then you find yourself submitting an application due at midnight, and at 11:55 is when you're able to do it. You don't have the time to do that quality control that you may have previously. So that was something else I thought was interesting.
Oh, I love so many great nuggets. I love that conversation. I think the idea of quality control is huge. I think, I'm a perfectionist. So I try to, always tell myself progress, not perfection, progress, not perfection. And that has its place, absolutely, right? And yet sometimes good enough isn't enough. And so there is this kind of thing that says, how important is quality going to be? And to assess that right up front so that then I can allow the right amount of time. Because is done enough? Sometimes it is. So even allowing ourselves the permission that says, you know what, I just need to get this done and out the door and that'll be okay. That sometimes is good enough. But if we know the answer to that is, no, that's not enough. It needs to be at this caliber, or it needs to be with this, these things in mind. And we need to make sure that we're really cognizant of X, Y, and Z. Then we need to make sure we're building out that time backwards. So that's how I always like to look at a project or any initiative that I'm looking at, that I size it up. And if you kind of think about it almost like a project manager, you put on a project management hat with your time and you think, okay, this is what I think the end result should be. Then what we need to do is we look backwards and we start what I'm going to call time blocking, okay? And so with time blocking, what we do is we look at our days and our weeks, and we say, if this is what I have due at the end of the week, or what I have due this week, here is how I need to achieve it. And in time blocking, one of the things that I do is I make sure that I am allowing enough time to schedule out each of these different blocks of time. Maybe it's an hour and a half, maybe it's 2 hours. Whatever the case may be, if you can look at your calendar and actually set up different time blocks that says from 1 to 3, I'm going to focus specifically on this project. Okay, then the next day, I'm going to work on it from 2 to 4. Now, here's where people are going to push me back and they're going to go, but wait, there's inevitably things that come up every day and it derails my time. We all have surprises that happen every day in our schedules, right? So guess what I do? I plan for surprises. I put in my calendar a question mark on time. Maybe it's an hour 11, because typically when something comes up, it takes about an hour of my time. Maybe it only takes a half an hour. But we know enough to know surprises happen. Things derail our time. So plan for that derailment. Plan for having things pop up that we aren't sure what's going to happen, but we know something is. So then what happens is, guess what? If I have a great day and no surprises fall down from the earth, they don't fall down from the sky, I have an extra hour in my day I can either put towards tomorrow, or I can do something that did not get done. So that is so important, is to think about what is the end result and how do I block out time in order to get there. And I always say, if you haven't done it before and you don't know how long it's going to take, plan for more time than you think it will take. So if you think a project may take 4 hours, plan 5 or 6 hours worth of work. that it's going to take. Because guess what? The best thing you can give yourself is a snow day, right? That's why we were always so excited as kids when we got snow day, because guess what it really was? Time that was not planned. See, kids are so smart. They understand this. This is so fabulous. I love the idea of adult snow days. That's what I want to give you the gift of. I want you to be able to have extra time so that then you have the extra time to do some of these things that you've been wanting to do. Okay? Then we have this idea of things that give us joy or energy. And right now, especially during the pandemic, I realize everything has changed. And so some of the things that maybe did give us joy aren't maybe giving us joy, or maybe our jobs have changed so much, or we're having to hustle harder, right? We're having to raise more funds. We're having to make sure that people know who we are more, that branding is more important than ever before, and we need to stay relevant. So with this, I would take it back to what your why is, okay? Why are you doing what you are doing for that nonprofit? So if I can think, this specific work I'm working on is not super, it's not super energy producing for me. But here's my why. Here's why I'm associated with this organization. Here's why I do what I do. That helps us be able to bring some of that joy back and to make sure that it's top of mind. So there have been times, there are times in my life where I've needed a visual reminder, and I would totally recommend this to anyone. Put down your why. Write down on a piece of paper, right by your computer, what is your why? Because that helps drive you on those moments when you're like, I am in email jail. I can never get out. There's like, I'm in the weeds. I am stuck. Seeing the why for me helps me make better use of my time. And it makes me feel like my time counts for more. It helps give me more value to my time. So if that helps, write it down. So there's even the times in my life where I was having to work crazy hours in 2008, 2009 when the recession hit, and we were working insane hours and everybody was being laid off from the organization I was in. I got to keep my job, yay, which was so great, but it meant that I was working the job of 7 people. Okay, so why did I do what I did? It could have even been as easy as family, right? So that we could take care of each other, so that I could make sure that my family had what they needed. But it also could be things like, I really want to take my kids to Disney World, or it could be something like, I want to bring the best quality that I can to my clients. Again, whatever your why is, it doesn't matter. It's just that if you think of your why, it oftentimes gives us fuel to be able to spend our time better and to make sure that we feel more value in where and how we're spending our time. All right, any other things you want to share that you had conversation about? All right, can you guys see the screen? For me, it's kind of off to the side.
Yeah, we can see the there's no such thing as time management slide.
Excellent, perfect. Okay, so there are, I'm going to say 2 gurus, if you will, on time management. So the first, of course, is Covey, and Covey has a model that I'm sure people have seen before that says what is urgent, what is important, what is non-urgent, and what is not important. So we're going to be talking through that. But Rory Vaden is probably, I would say, the more up-and-comer, just because he's newer to this time management game. And what he says is it's really not about time management, it's about self-management. So this is having a good idea of what is important to you, okay? So here's an example outside of work. And sometimes I use outside of work examples because it makes it a little bit more relevant for people. I say being healthy and working out is super important to me. And I don't really make time to work out or make sure I'm staying healthy, right? Now, don't understand, I have plenty of time to read a book every day, okay? I read every single day. But do I always make time for working out? Not so much. So this is taking a step back and saying, I say it's important, but is it really important? This is really about managing myself, and then I can manage my time. So recently I've flipped this and I've said, working out is important to me so that I can be healthy. Okay. So then what I have done is on my time blocking, I have actually written in time every day that says Meredith is working out. Okay, this is a difference because I am saying it is important. I'm writing it down. I'm making it official in my calendar. But really what that represents more than time management is self-management. So I would ask you to really see, are your time management and self-management in alignment or not? If what you say is important, is really important, have you allocated the time? Okay. And again, this might not just be in your organization, but it also does pertain to our organization. So if I say that meeting with donors is super important, am I really making time to meet with our donors? Or is that more just lip service? Okay. If I say it's super important to me to get out and meet with the people we actually are serving, am I doing that? So this is just more of an alignment. So think of this kind of as a compass to make sure that these two things are in parallel with one another and they're working with each other, not against each other. Okay. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so these are mistakes that we make having to do with time management and priority management, okay? So there are a number of them. I'm gonna let you guys read through these, and I would love you to be totally honest and let me know what maybe are some of the mistakes you're making when it comes to time management, priority management, okay? So could it be failing to keep a to-do list? Is it maybe procrastinating? Is it thriving on busy? Multitasking? Whatever the case is, I would love you to go ahead, and I'm going to give you a couple minutes here to read these. And then I'd like everyone to put in the chat, no judging here. This is a judge-free zone. What is the mistake you make? Okay. Jennifer says multitasking is failing to manage distractions with kids. Yes, those kids, we love them so much, but they are the best time squashers, right? Failing to manage distractions and procrastination. Yes, and effectively scheduling tasks and managing distractions. Definitely. Multitasking, not taking breaks. Yes, yes, yes. Multitasking for sure is one that I struggle with a lot. I want to be very efficient. Now that doesn't mean it's effective, but I try to be so efficient and do so many things all at the same time. And goodness, the result is I'm a mess, right? That I'm spinning my wheels and things maybe aren't going well. Monica says not prioritizing, failing to manage distractions, trying to be available whenever anyone needs something. Yes, there's a lot of us who either want to be liked, right? Or want to say, yes, sure, I'll do it. I'll take it on. No problem. No problem. Come on, give it to me. And then suddenly we're buried up to here. Yes. Number 11, I love it. David, thank you for your candor. All of the above, right? Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I love it, David. I do too. That's so fun. Absolutely. 11 is very valid. I like this. We're thinking outside the box. Good. Oh, I love the idea, Carla, that you say 4 and 7, which leads to 3, right? So for the things then that Carla's saying she struggles with, it then leads to a byproduct. And this happens a lot. So what I do is I do multitasking. So because I'm doing so many things at a time, I sometimes can't keep track of everything that I've said yes to. So I'm taking on too much, which is number 6. And then this can lead to a lot of different things, right? Burnout, I can be tired, it can damage relationships. So it's super important, not that we are labeling and saying, oh man, Monica, you're just not good at prioritizing. This isn't like a scolding thing. What this is being aware of it. So saying, okay, I'm aware that these are the struggles I have with time management. So now I can look at that differently and try to combat that. So then what I do as I'm time blocking in my week and scheduling my week is I say, okay, I get to myself. All right, now, did you take on too much this week? Is this really attainable? How are you going to do this so that you're not multitasking and doing 50 things at a time? How do each of these things fall into a time slot so I can really allocate and be present with where and how I'm spending my time? Okay, so if you're aware of these things, right? And if you then can go, these are the areas that I'm struggling with. Our goal then is to be able to flip that and say, now that I know it, how perhaps could I do something differently? Okay, so that's what I want you to really think about as we go along. But what I think helps first and foremost is to really get a sense of where we're spending our time. So as we move to the next slide, our next slide is asking us to really do an assessment of where we are spending time. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to list out any sort of daily task, assignments, projects, any of this that you are currently working on. Okay, anywhere that you spend your time daily, and I want you to write it down. Okay, this may seem goofy to have to write everything down, but I promise there's a method to my madness. So I'm going to give you a few minutes here and I'll actually be quiet and I will let you guys write down where you are currently spending your time. All right, and go. All right, anybody still need a little bit more time? All right, well, what's that exercise like in writing down where you're spending your time? What does it feel like or look like or seem like when you have it all written down? Sad that there's nothing big, right? You're like, I spend all this time doing what? Right? It feels sometimes like I need something to show for this. What is it? What is it that I'm doing? Yeah, I love your honesty, David. It does feel like that sometimes, right? So this is where we really want to go, okay, now that I've listed this, is this really where I want to be spending my time? Is this what I should be spending my time on? Are these the important things? Now, of course, we're all going to have busy work that we have to do, okay? So I love to wave a magic wand, poof, and make sure that you are, getting more time and that you don't have to worry about any of the like kind of lower hanging fruit anymore. Unfortunately, that is not the case. So with that in mind, it's important though to make sure that we are scheduling in those bigger kind of, as Ms. Angie called it, the higher impact items, right? We need to make sure we're doing that too, because a lot of times we work so much in the business, we're not working on the business. And that's important. We have to make sure that we're doing both. So the other thing I think that is interesting is a lot of times it's hard for us to think about what we actually do during the day. Where are we spending our time? What in the heck are we doing? It feels like we're so stinking busy, but then at the end of the day, we go, gosh, what the heck was it that I even did? So we want to make sure that we're listing some of these things out so that we also can see and understand where our time is going. And maybe that's where it should be, but maybe we need to audit that list. And a time audit is so important. Just like you audit things in the office and you think, is this going well? Is this where I should be spending my time? Is this what I should be doing? Audit, check things off that list. If you should not be spending your time on them, cross them off, get them off the list. Super important. Now, what I want you to do is just think about this going forward. We have kind of some slides built in that talk about where you're spending your time weekly, where are you spending your time quarterly, annually. We're going to skip past all of these, but I would like you to do those things, okay? I would like you to think about those and list those out too. Because here's what I know. There are certain jobs or certain industries or certain organizations that are busier at sometimes than other times. I know many of you nonprofits work on a fiscal year, which means June might be insanity for you, right? If that's when your fiscal year is. So be aware that when you are time managing, that you leave extra time in June because you know that's going to be crazy, right? My husband was in car sales there for a hot minute. And in car sales, the last week of every month was insanity. I didn't see him. But yet every week of that last month, I would go, well, where are you? When are you coming home? Well, duh, he's going to be busier. So think about your schedule in terms of those things. Consider when there are times that are busier. If, let's say, you are doing accounting for your group, maybe each quarter, at the end of each quarter, so I can go like clockwork. The end of March is going to be insanity. And then, the next 3 months and the next 3 months. So plan for these things. Plan for the things that come up in your job that you know are going to take a lot of time. But the only way we can really do that and start owning our calendar is if we take a look at what we're doing, not on just a weekly basis, but also when we start breaking it into months, quarters, and an annual basis. Okay. So I am going to ask you to flip to slide 10, which is our next Rory Vaden quote. And it says, the idea of future time planning. What is the most important thing I can do today that would make tomorrow better? All right. And I'm going to share a clip with you guys so that I can show you a video that I think is important. All right. See if it'll let me share it here. All right, so this is Rory Vaden himself.
Make sure I can get this going here. Do you guys see this on the screen? Okay.
We say, what's the most important thing I can do today? But that is not how multipliers think. Multipliers instead ask the question, what can I do today that would make tomorrow better? What can I do right now that would make the future better. They're making the significance calculation. See, when I say multiply your time, that might sound a little bit superfluous. It might sound like an over-exaggeration, but it really is not. Now, while it is true that we all have the same amount of time inside of one day, 24 hours, 1,440 minutes, 86,400 seconds. And there's nothing that any of us can do to create more time in one day, but that's exactly the problem. That type of thinking is the problem. What we have to do is break out of that paradigm and instead think about tomorrow. And that brings us to the premise for how you multiply time. The way that you multiply time is simple. You multiply your time by giving yourself the emotional permission to spend time on things today that give you more time tomorrow. That's the significance calculation. You multiply time by giving yourself the emotional permission to spend time on things today that create more time tomorrow. The significance calculation changes everything. The focus funnel is our attempt to create a visual depiction that codifies the thought process that multipliers go through in their head unconsciously when they are evaluating how to spend their time. It's why some people create extraordinary, explosive, exponential results, and other people seem to kind of just create linear traction. And it works like this. If your tasks all come into the top of the funnel, the first question a multiplier asks is, can I eliminate this? Is it even worth doing? It's another example how everything you know about time management is wrong, or at least that it has changed, because most of us use to-do lists, and multipliers realize that next generation time management has much more to do with what you don't do than what you do. Time multipliers realize that perfection is achieved not only when nothing more can be added, but when nothing more can be taken away. It is the permission to ignore. Because anything that we say no to today creates more time for us tomorrow. The challenge emotionally is that we struggle with guilt, and we struggle with wanting to say no, but really feeling like we have to say yes. And so we go through life trying to never say no. And in one of the interviews I conducted with the multiplier, they said something that changed my life. They said, Rory, it's futile to go through life trying to never say no. What you have to realize is that you are always saying no to something. Because anytime you say yes to one thing, you are simultaneously saying no to an infinite number of others. If you can't eliminate the task, the next question is, can I automate the task? Anything that I create a process for today saves me time tomorrow. It's like setting up online bill pay. I never have 2 hours in my day to set up online bill pay. I just don't have time. And if I had 2 hours in my day, I would never use it to set up online bill pay. But a multiplier realizes that if I save 30 minutes a month from paying my bills by setting up online bill pay, then it makes sense to invest those 2 hours, because then after just 4 months' time, I will have broken even on that investment. And every month thereafter, I will get something we call ROTI, return on time invested. Automation is to your time exactly what compounding interest is to your money. Just like compounding interest takes money and it makes money into more money, automation takes time and it makes it into more time. The way that wealthy people think about money is exactly the same way that multipliers think about time, and they give themselves the permission to invest the time and energy to automate the process. If it can't be automated, then the next question is, can it be delegated? Can I teach someone else how to do this? I'm reminded of a time when I was 7 years old, and I'll never forget, I was in the car with my mom, and I hit her with this question. I said, Mom, do I have a dad? And as you might imagine, that was a pretty difficult question for a single mother to navigate with her 7-year-old. And it was the first time that my mom told me her life story. She was pregnant at 17, divorced a couple years later, pregnant again at 22, and then she was divorced from my biological father 6 months after I was born. So there she was, 22 years old, single mom, no high school education. And she explained to me, she said, Rory, I decided at that point that I would never have a man in my life because I haven't had good luck with men. And we may not have a lot, and we may not have a dad, but we're going to have love. And so we went back and forth for a little while. And I said, well, you know, Mom, I love our family. I really do. I love our family. But I think it would be really cool to have a dad. And so she said, well, I'll tell you what, honey, if you want a dad, then why don't you go out and find yourself a good dad? What kind of crap is that? It just so happened that that was my first day at a new Shaolin Kung Fu center. And I had been studying martial arts since I was 5. And so they put me in this all adult school to be a little more advanced. And there was another gentleman who walked in. It was his first day also, but this guy was much older than me. He had long hair and tattoos all up and down his arm and leather jacket. And he came in on a motorcycle. And this guy was about the scariest dude you can imagine if you're 7 years old. And he gets paired up as my sparring partner. His name was Kevin. He turned out to be pretty nice. Well, we started to advance through the belt levels together. And so Kevin started bringing me home from class every once in a while. Then before you know it, Kevin came over on the weekends and we would practice our forms. And then we caught a movie. And then before long, Mom came with us to the movies. And so it was the 3 of us that were going to movies together. And I'll never forget the first time the 2 of them went to a movie without me. Well, as it turns out, Kevin and I tested for our black belts together on the same day when I was 10 years old. They got married 2 weeks later. A couple years after that, Kevin adopted me and I changed my last name from Rory McLaughlin to Rory Vaden, and they have been married for 20 years ever since. And the point of that story is that you can delegate anything. But if you ask the average person, you said, are there things you know you could be delegating to somebody else? We would say yes. But then you say, well, why don't you train someone else to do it? And what most of us would say is, they say, well, because they just can't do it as well as I can. And that may be true once, maybe twice, but it is only true absent the significance calculation. Because if you think longer term, you realize they'll be able to master the task just like you were. Significance changes everything. It's how you multiply your time. It's giving yourself the permission of imperfect for a little while, because over time they'll be able to figure it out. Now, if you can't automate or delegate a task, that task drops out the bottom of the funnel. And at that point, there's only one remaining question. And that question is, should I do this task now? Must it be done now? Or can it wait until later? If the task must be done now, then that's what we call concentrate. It's the permission to protect. All right, the permission to protect. It's all about focus and eliminating distractions. And honestly, there's nothing all that exciting or new there. However, if you ask the question, can this wait until later? And you decide that the answer is yes, then that's not eliminate, automate, or delegate. That is what we call procrastinate on purpose. Procrastinate on purpose. Now, you're not going to procrastinate on it forever. You're going to pop that activity back to the top of the funnel, at which point it will enter into a holding pattern where it will cycle through the focus funnel until inevitably one day, eventually, one of the other 4 strategies will be executed on whatever that task is. And what you find is that if something can continually wait, often what happens is you eventually develop the courage to do what you should have done in the first place, which was eliminate it. Or you discover a system for how to automate it, or someone rises up to the call of leadership. They rise up to the occasion and it ends up being delegated. Or it ends up becoming something that is significant enough for you to spend your time on.
All right. So just so you know, you can delegate anything. Okay. I know that that's a really fun example, but I think what we do tell ourselves a lot is, I'm the only one who can do this task. And oftentimes that is just not the case. Okay. So I wanted to show you this because I think it's super important to see what that focus funnel looks like. Do you mind getting us back on the slides then, so that we're on the focus funnel one? I think the focus funnel, what is super interesting and cool about this focus funnel is the idea that things change. Okay. So what was a priority maybe at one point is no longer a priority. Okay, so this could be maybe something your organization was working on. Maybe your organization thought that it was going to be so important to do something in person. Maybe you guys were going to have a big event and welcome people into your new space. I don't know what that might look like. But what's important is to go, is this really truly still important? And maybe during the pandemic, you go, oh, this needs to keep going through this focus funnel because it's not important. And so we're going to procrastinate on purpose with reason, because this is no longer an initiative that we need to do. But then maybe what you've found is now that the pandemic is where it's at, maybe you go, that is actually no longer a priority. And so what I love is that he says, continuously run this through this filter. And eventually you might find we just need to eliminate it. And that's okay. So I invite you to look through the things you are doing on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly, on a quarterly basis, and find out how can you triage those time commitments you have made and figure out how to either eliminate, automate, delegate, and or just do it right now, right? Use this focus funnel as a sort of format, if you will, for making sure that the things that you are spending your time on are your top priorities. All right, next slide, please. So we always hear about these two different phrases in priority management, effectiveness and efficiency. And sometimes we feel like we have to pick one or the other. So I always pride myself on being efficient. I want to be efficient. So I am always wanting to do things quick and fast. But you know what? Sometimes in that balance, what I lose is effectiveness. Because if I had slowed down and made sure that I could really give the prioritization on time and mental capacity and resources, I would find that I could actually do things more effectively if I slowed down. So please understand, what we want is these two to work together cohesively on your priority management. We want them to be not an either or, but a both. So do the right thing and do the right thing right. Do it correctly. Slow down. I know it's hard. I know it gets crazy. And especially as we're working from home sometimes too, we think, oh gosh, I gotta get this done. But these should be working together, okay? All right. Our next slide then also has to do with some of these things we talk about in time management as well. The idea of urgency, importance, significance. How long does something matter? How much does it matter? But more importantly, Rory Vaden's model says, how long is it going to matter? That the significance is what is important and most important for priority management. How long is it going to matter? How long is it going to matter to our organization? How long is it going to matter to our nonprofit? This is really going back to our why. Okay, so if we're spending time on this, is it something that has residual payoff longer term? Because if it's not, and we are just spinning wheels, we're taking energy and resources and time that we don't need to, that we shouldn't do. And I know we all get caught in the weeds, and that's going to happen. But this is saying, really think about your time and think about it through the significance factor. So I would invite you to look through all of the things that you have said you spend your time on and think about how significant those tasks are. And then we would put it towards this template. And our last template that I'm going to show you is Covey's model of time management. And this is the one that we've seen before. Okay, this is the one that says, is it important, not important, urgent, or not urgent? Okay, we have the next slide. Oh, perfect. See, she's on the ball. She's got this. So what we want to say is that everything is urgent and important, because I don't want to tell people I'm spending my time on things that are not important or not urgent. And yet I just told you about that buddy hole that I went through when I found out that Lawrence Skate Park was going to be having an event. Guess what? That's box 4, which is our box of waste. And that is our not urgent, not important box. That's what we call that. Social media, darn it, oftentimes falls into that box. Okay, that's a trap that we fall into, and we oftentimes are spending time on that area more than we think, because that is the best time suck ever. right? I think I'm going on social media for 2 minutes and then I am there for maybe half an hour. So think about where you're spending your time. Potentially it's there. All right. So I'm going to start with that box of 4 because it's the easiest one to try to eliminate. Okay. And we're going to work backwards. So box 3 then is going to be the quadrant of not urgent, but important. And I'm going here because this is actually a super important box, okay? So box 3, we call it the box of leadership. Okay, box 3 is our box of leadership, okay? So we oftentimes think, well, it's not urgent. I don't need to do this at this time. But this could be things like delegating. This is training. This is teaching. So while we say it's not urgent, right? I don't have to teach them how to do that right this very minute. It is still important that they know. And so oftentimes we get rid of this box and we say, well, it's not super urgent. And so we eliminate it or we don't focus on it. But this box is so important because this is quality. This is proactive. This is not being reactive. Okay? So box 3 is something that we do need to spend a lot of time on. And we need to make sure that we are automating things in this, that we're looking and we're thinking forward. But again, because we say it's important, but it's not urgent, I oftentimes find that organizations eliminate this box or spend less time in there. I'm going to invite you, please spend more time in this box. This box is super important. Box number 2 then, okay? Box number 2 is the not important and urgent. We call this the box of deception. Dun, dun, dun. All right, box of deception looks like an emergency on somebody else's part, okay? This is not important to you, but maybe it's urgent to the organization all of a sudden. And you're thinking, well, had we not put it off to the last minute, it wouldn't have to be so urgent. So what we say is, oh my gosh, I have to drop everything. I have to do it right now. But I'll tell you, if we spent more time in box 1 and box 3, we wouldn't have this box at all. Okay, so this is where we get those bombs dropped in our day and all of a sudden our day is derailed because oftentimes it is an emergency on somebody else's part. It oftentimes is where, oh my gosh, we haven't been proactive and so we're having to be reactive. So what we want to do is make sure with our own time management and priority management that we are not making our problems somebody else's problems. So if we're doing this correctly, then we are going to spend a lot more time in box 1, which is the most urgent and the most important box, okay? And this box is super important because this is our box of necessity. This is our box of strategy. This is our box of top priorities and management. And this also can be our box when we do have things like crisis, right? And crises are going to happen, but I mean real legit crises. Like, oh my gosh, we have a pandemic and we need to change everything immediately, okay? So yes, this can be a reactive box, but it should be where you can drop everything because you've already prioritized and you can make space for this, okay? So box 1, box of necessity. So I invite you to look at your schedules, spend some time, make this work after our time together and figure out what things can truly be eliminated, delegated, and or automated. But you can also use this framework as well to help you understand, ooh, I got to prioritize different. I need to figure out what are my box 1 and box 3. And where can I eliminate box 2 and box 4? Okay, I have thrown a ton at you. So what I'd love to do is for the last couple minutes, answer any questions you all have. Make this even more relevant, bring it home for you. But I want to make sure that I'm answering any questions that you have before our time together comes to a close. Questions, comments, thoughts, anything that's really helpful to you or a tool or technique you can use.
Can you see using this in a board situation so that your entire board would use one or two of these models in setting their goals and setting the steps to get to those goals?
Yeah, I love that question. Great. So I think for this, I'm actually working on a board right now, or with a board, I should say right now, that they haven't done everything tied to their mission, vision, values. And so with that, we have people who are thinking they're doing the right thing, right? That they have the best of intentions, and yet they're not maybe spending the time on the things that make the biggest difference when we take into that significant calculation. So being able to even share this framework, I think helps, because this way we know, okay, this maybe is urgent and it's maybe important to our organization, but how significant is this in the long term versus how much is this just something on our plate right now? Because the significance factor is what is going to go towards more like our 3-year strategic plan or our 5-year strategic plan. So absolutely, I would say, you know, if even you guys just have your boards watch some of this so you can align language and then have a conversation. Absolutely. The Covey model of the urgent versus important and making sure that you're aligning in that would be great. And even having a conversation that says, okay, guys, what do we think is urgent? What do we think is important? What should go in box 1? Do we think what should go in box 2? Just so that there's alignment. Absolutely. A workshop around that would be fantastic, or spending time around it. Good question. Other thoughts? You're welcome to go to the last slide. I know sometimes in these kinds of formats, it's a little bit harder to ask some of the questions that we want. So what I'm going to do is I am going to, oh, you can actually go to the last one there. Perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to have my information up here. If you have any questions on any of this or want to bounce additional ideas off, feel free to reach out to me. Like I said, I know through chat, sometimes this isn't where you want to necessarily ask some of these questions, but feel free to reach out to me personally. I would love to help talk with you all. And I just so appreciate you guys being here with me today and spending your time here, because like I said, time is the highest commodity we have. So I certainly appreciate it. So if there's no other questions, I'm going to throw it back to Miss Angie.
Great. Thanks, Meredith. Really appreciate it. And I just dropped in the chat, we will send out the session and the slides. And in particular, I love that funnel. You know, this urgent versus important chart has been something that I've always had in the back of my mind. But Carrie, I loved your idea about using that with a board and a committee. And then, you know, I also was thinking, oh my goodness, that might be a really neat thing to do both as if you have a staff team at your organization as well, you know, to really spend some deep dive time, even looking at your strategic plan and the reality of where we find ourselves today. So we will definitely send out this follow-up information and materials, including the video link, which definitely made me smile this morning. So thanks for sharing that. We really, you know, appreciate this was something that was brought forward from some of our nonprofit leaders as a session that they'd like to have a deeper dive on. So please continue to let us know if there are topics that you would like to see as part of a nonprofit training. Bridget is going to pull up the very last slide here to remind everybody that there is an onboard the basics of being an effective board member session that's scheduled for April 20th. So if this is something that you or other members of your nonprofit board would be interested in, we'll send that registration information out to you as well as part of our follow-up. But thanks again, Meredith. Thanks to each of you for spending time today. I certainly have lots of nuggets that I'm taking away, but mostly I'm taking away gratitude that that we're doing the best we can, and there are more tools that we can implement to do even better. But the self-care piece, I think, is something that all of us hopefully can embrace in the weeks ahead. So thanks again, Meredith. Great to see everyone. Enjoy the day, and here's to some sunshine. Let's all hope. Have a good one. Great to see you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.